And on behalf of the ministry, I thank you for your interest in being here this evening. To my left are the panelists for tonight's discussions. In the middle is the Honorable Michael Weeks, the Minister for National Security. To his right is Commissioner Darrin Simons of the Bermuda Police Service. And to his left is Mr. Alexander White, the Privacy Commissioner for Bermuda. And so let me start by also thanking St. Paul's. I saw Reverend Tweed here. There he is. Thank you very much, my brother, for letting us use your wonderful facilities for tonight. So tonight will look like this. We're going to have some opening remarks from Minister Weeks, followed by a presentation by the Commissioner of Police, and then there will be a discussion between the Commissioner of Police and the Privacy Commissioner around the whole business of CCTV and how it impacts privacy. And then there will be an open mic for questions from yourselves to the panelists. I'll be your moderator for this evening, and having said all that, I will welcome to the podium Minister Weeks to give us some brief remarks as we open.
Thank you, B.S., and good evening to everyone. I want to begin by welcoming all of you and thanking you for taking the time to come out tonight. I genuinely appreciate it because, as you know, we've had a lot of discourse over the last 2 years about CCTV. This town hall is important because it gives us a chance to speak directly with one another about the CCTV camera network, to answer your questions and to listen to your views. I see tonight as part of an open dialogue with the people that we are here to serve. Let me say this plainly. The government promised in the 2023 Durham speech that we would deliver an upgraded island-wide CCTV system as part of our work to improve public safety. And I am proud to report that this promise has been kept. The full rollout of the CCTV camera network is nearly 100% complete. Across the island, we have 225 cameras installed and integrated, covering 130 locations, giving us 460 camera views. This network includes different types of cameras: pan, tilt, zoom, multi-sensory, varifocal, and license plate recognition cameras. Are all designed to provide clear, real-time coverage of key public areas. The system is operated on a modern fiber network, bringing state-of-the-art technology to our shores. These cameras are not there to spy on people. They are there to support law enforcement and keeping our streets, our parks, our neighborhoods safe. They are an added tool to help deter crime and assist the police in solving serious incidents, including the gun and gang violence that has caused so much pain in our communities. But I must stress, these cameras are not a substitute for what really makes the difference. That is, the people of Bermuda stepping up, standing together, and working with the police. Technology helps, yes, but it is the courage of residents who come forward, who report what they see, and speak up when they know something that truly helps to solve crime. We have seen time and again that when our community engages, when people provide information, the police can act, and we can prevent the next act of violence. These cameras must be seen as just one part of the solution. They are a tool, but they cannot replace the role that each of us has in creating a safer Bermuda. It takes a community that refuses to be silent, that refuses to let violence rule our streets. Community violence is not just a police problem or a government problem. It is a problem that we all must share. I also want to speak directly to the concerns some of you have raised about privacy. I hear you. We have listened carefully and taken those concerns seriously. From the start, this system has been designed to respect your privacy. Cameras are focused on public spaces and roadways. They are not aimed at private homes. We have worked closely with the Privacy Commissioner's Office and the PIPA unit to make sure the system meets Bermuda's privacy laws, and that it will continue to do so as those laws evolve. The vendor, Digicel, was required to build in privacy safeguards at both the hardware and software levels. As for speed detection, I want to be upfront. While the system has laid the groundwork for speed cameras in the future, our focus right now is on general security and supporting the police. Work on potential speed enforcement is still in the planning stage, and it will involve careful consideration, further testing, and legislative changes before anything is implemented. This project reflects collaboration between ministries, the police, external partners like Digicel, Balco, and the corporations of Hamilton and St. George's. It reflects a shared determination to bring the best technology we can to help protect our beautiful island. I encourage everyone here to think not just about what government can do or what campus can do, but about what we can do together as neighbors, as families, as Bermudians who care about the future of our island. I thank you for being here, and I look forward to a good discussion. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Minister. I will now invite to the podium Commissioner of Corrections, Police, Mr. Darrin Simons.
All right. Thank you. It's always nice to play to a supportive crowd. I'm going to go through a fairly lengthy PowerPoint presentation around the CCTV. There's a number of sort of facts and information. Could you just turn the mic up just a little bit, because I think it just continues to go in and out. I don't know if this one's better. Where's my person? This one's good? Just I've got to put it closer? Okay.
No.
All right, there's a number of sort of basic background kind of information that I think will really help our discussion. My first, can we go to the next slide? I just want to make sure, can you read that? Can you read them in the back, or do I need to do a little bit more reading? All right? Okay, so we're going to talk about the overall aim of the CCTV system. And from a policing perspective, the overall aim is really about making Bermuda safer. So when you think about why do we have CCTV, where is it put, what are its features, the overall aim of that is to make Bermuda safer. I'm going to give you a little bit of an overview of the CCTV system. Now, we're talking about, and the current conversation and discourse would seem to think that this is a new thing, right? This has been around for over 20 years. And I'm fortunate enough to have been involved in every single iteration of that. I was involved in the first CCTV system, which was largely in Hamilton Police Station, brought about during Colin Coxell's time. And I think if you look at some of the aspects of that, particularly as we are going to talk about where we are today in terms of capabilities, the first generation was basically citywide. It didn't have any LPR, license plate recognition. It had no ability to kind of integrate with other kinds of systems. And I think really importantly, the resolution of that really just provided what we call situation awareness. So we knew that someone on a bike, not quite sure what kind of bike, certainly couldn't make out the license plate, was in the area. So we had a blob on a bike going through the area. That's going way back. Fast forward to sort of like the second major iteration. Again, it moved from just citywide, thank you, to more island-wide. And when we look at the choice about where we're putting cameras, camera placement, pretty much it's around thoroughfares. And it's around traffic, where large amounts of people are traveling, and to some degree where there are crime hotspots, all right? And similar to the original iteration, it did have LPR, sorry, not similar. New to this version, it had license plate recognition. It didn't have any video analytics, and it had no ability to integrate with any other kinds of systems. And that system also, because of the camera technology that was there at that point in time, just provided just general situation awareness. So we knew that a bike went through the area. We knew that there were a number of cars going through the area. We knew that it was 2 people on a bike and not one person on a bike. But we would still struggle to identify what was the make and model. Very often we had to send those images overseas to be enhanced. And certainly reading the license plate was generally speaking problematic and not something that we could reasonably rely on. And when I say reading the license plate, I'm not talking about the cameras that were dedicated to license plate recognition. I'm talking about just the general cameras that had a view of the road, and when the vehicle passed them, could you or could you not make out the license plate? Can everybody hear me fine? All right. No?
Yeah.
Now you hear me. Oh,
Yeah.
now I hear me too. All right. So a little bit about the old system. It had 19 license plate recognition sites throughout the island. Sometimes there are two sites in one location because you had to cover traffic going east and west. We had 83 fixed cameras, 52 pan-tilt zooms, a total of 154 cameras that are spread across, I think it's about 85 locations, all right? And then fast forward to today, we still have the same 19 license plate recognition, which is across 15 sites, like 15 different locations. We have 51 what we call varifocal or just fixed image cameras, 103 what we call multi-sensor cameras. So and they're the ones that look like a pancake. I'm going to talk about each one of the cameras in a second. But each one of these multi-sensor cameras has 4 cameras in it. So it's one body. It looks a bit like a stack of pancakes, but it has 4 individual cameras in it. And we've got 74 pan-tilt zoom cameras. And this is spread across 152 sites. And when you count up there's a term we call view, camera views, because if a multi-sensor camera has got 4 individual little cameras in it, that one device provides 4 views. So when we get to completion, there will be 548 views. However, today, actually installed, there are 460. So complete today, the first phase of the project is the bottom part of the chart. So we have 130 sites, 225, for those that like the stats, 225 cameras, 224 of them are, actually, is it 225 Digicel or 200, have we got them all online or is it still down one? They're all, okay, so we're all 225, 460 views, and 460 views are online. Okay, so that's where we are in phase 1. So in phase 2, if you've done the math, we're going to go from 130 sites to 152 sites when it all is said and done. But in terms of phase 1, we're 100% complete and online. Now we're going to look at the capabilities of each of the cameras. So we'll start with the first one, which is the pan-tilt zoom camera. This is what it looks like. So when you drive across the island and you see something that looks like that on a pole, that is a pan-tilt zoom camera. And what that means is that little ball can spin all around 360 degrees. It can tilt up and down, sufficient, to go from top to bottom of it can look at the ground right down, and it can look at the sky, right? And it can also zoom. and they are powerful zooms, right? So those zooms have got about 42x on the zoom, so they are powerful zoom cameras. Yeah, okay. Next one is the multi-sensor camera. So this is the one I said looks like a stack of pancakes on a pole, right? It's round and it looks like if you had a nice little stack of morning pancakes on a pole. Is what it looks like. And in there, this multi-sensor camera has got 4 individual cameras, which allow us to position them. You know, if you need to see 360 degrees constantly, each one of those cameras can take up a portion of that 360 degree field of view. And the last type of camera is what we call it's a varifocal camera, or the cameras that are used for the license plate recognition. So there are some, anytime we've got the license plate recognition, or ANPR, which stands for automatic number plate recognition, but anytime that function is being, this is the kind of camera, this is what it looks like. But in some locations in the island, you have this varifocal camera, and one of the advantages of the varifocal camera over all the other ones is that it performs better in a low light. So there are some cameras where they have better low light performance than all of the other ones. All right, so how did we select the location? So in principle, CCTV sites were chosen basically to address crime and traffic flow matters. So we're thinking about how does a person, one of the primary thinking is how does a person get to and from the commission of a crime, right? So we're covering the major thoroughfares as a primary objective. And then there are locations in Bermuda. It wouldn't take, you know, anybody who sort of looks at the news wouldn't take a rocket scientist to figure out where some of those locations might be. So there's a crime prevention aspect, and there's a road use, road safety, road harm reduction kind of aspect. Each site, so there will be in total 152 sites, and right now there's 130, but each one of those sites has a written rationale, justification for why we selected that site. So if we go to, talking about the airport, so we're going to talk about, we talked about vehicular traffic, general situation awareness, and a key distinction about the airport is that it's critical infrastructure, critical national infrastructure. So making sure the airport is safe and knowing what's going on, who's going in or around, what vehicles are moving through that area for the airport is pretty important. And if you go to any international airports, you're going to see CCTV coverage on the way to the airport. And if you're a modern airport, there's a whole lot more other technology that's happening that you don't even see. So if you've gone anywhere, I'm going to say within a mile or two of an airport, you can bet the government knows that your cell phone was in that area. You can absolutely guarantee. There will be, in other cities, just a whole lot of other technologies that are deployed. The weights of vehicles, depending on where you're traveling, will be tracked and monitored as on approach to the city. We have some cameras. All right, so the next one is Middle Road, Port Royal. So again, we've got traffic issues. It's a major access point as you're traveling east and west on the island. There's multi-residential areas in that area, and reports of crime might have been suggested that criminals who might be interested in crime in that general residential area may use that stretch of road. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to get to and from the area where they have an interest in committing crime. And on that kind of goes. The point there is that every one of the 130 sites today, 152 at the end, there's a written reason why we have a camera there. It's not just, I think it's a good idea. Private information, you need to protect that data, right? So CCTV is used by the BPS to prevent crime, assist with public safety, and protect property in the public. Actually, an interesting point is that, which people often think I mean, the minister made it clear, but people often think it's the police CCTV system. It's not. It's the Ministry of National Security. It is a Bermuda government infrastructure, you know, that is owned, and we just manage, monitor it on behalf of the government. So the PIPA applies to the CCTV, and the reason why it applies to CCTV is because it captures personal information, right? So we have to govern the use, the site selection, in line with what PIPA says about privacy. We have a policy that outlines the principles, processes that are related to the use of a CCTV. And the aims of those policies and training, as we kind of will talk about, are to establish a consistent lawful use for the CCTV. All right, we have a number of guiding principles. So from the UK, there are, I think it's 12, yeah, there are 12 guiding principles that the UK government have published as general guidelines in practice that we have adopted here in Bermuda. And our implementation of CCTV complies with those guiding principles. So I'll just go through each of them. The use of the CCTV must be for a legitimate aim and necessary to meet that need, that pressing need, okay? So again, each location that we have, there's a rationale for, and the overall aim of the CCTV system is to make Bermuda safer. We are primarily concerned about serious crime, but also, you know, road harm. There's consideration of privacy and the impact on individuals is crucial with regular reviews. So we do, I mean, we're just starting now, but over the years, we make an assessment about, is this camera location still relevant? Like, is the risk or issues that led to the rationale for placing that camera, do those risks, issues, are they 3, 4, 5 years later, are they still relevant, right? So we are doing that kind of assessment. And when we are selecting a location, and in particular what the cameras are looking at, we are thinking about privacy of individuals and trying to balance any risk to privacy or encroachment, intrusion on privacy against the need for safety. Okay, we have to establish or have clear responsibility and accountability for all the activities, and that's very much in place in terms of system policies and practice. And the reality is that has been in place for 20 years. Clear rules, policies, and things like that. Okay, images and information will be retained as long as they are needed. In Bermuda, the contractual period is 180 days. So after, and it might actually be sooner in practice, but it will certainly be no longer than 180 days. So basically it's first in, first out after 180 days, unless that imagery is marked for retention. So there's just this rolling deletion or overwriting of material, and then something will happen, and or an officer will say, hey, I need footage, there's an accident that occurred over here, or a road traffic fatality that occurred, and we will mark footage for retention, and we will keep it as long as we need to. Access to retained images and information should be restricted with defined rules and access and disclosure. So we're going to talk about that. I'll probably repeat this, but the CCTV room is, you know, locked. You have to have key card access to get into the room, and within the room, the CCTV monitoring facility, we're monitoring their CCTV. So we monitor all the activity that goes on in that room. Only trained operators can use the system. I mean, interestingly, the system is actually like you couldn't just rock up and use it. Your average user, unless you've been trained, you're just not going to sit down and be able to really use the system. It's quite technical, and you need to be trained on it, notwithstanding the privacy training that individuals receive around how and when to use the system. Adherence to operational, technical competency standards, okay, implementation security. Some of the rest of those rules are kind of like just obvious in that we have systems and process that govern. One of the ones I want to highlight in this is that the CCTV is used for a legitimate purpose. So I talked about that the overarching aim is making Bermuda safer. That can be due to the prevention and detection of around crime, investigation. So those kinds of traditional policing purpose. It's not rocket science. When you think of what the police do, the CCTV system is used in that line. So say, for example, it's not used for entertainment. We could release footage to the media, but we'd have to go through a process of approving the release of that footage, let's say, to the media. There may be a public interest reason, and we would probably, almost certainly, do things like blur images, license plates, make sure that no one individual or no single person is identifiable. And the other one, which is kind of not interesting, but number 12 talks about the accuracy and up-to-date information used for matching purposes against reference databases. That's a lot of words, right? To basically say, if you're going to be doing license plate recognition, then if you're going to be doing then the database that you're checking the numbers against ought to be up to date, right? So that's basically what that says. But you can appreciate how important that is. If you sold a vehicle to somebody and the police are coming to your house because it's the car that you sold a year ago, that's a bit problematic, right? So you could understand that provision makes sense. All right, cameras and areas of coverage. All right, I'm just actually going to skip to the last bullet point there. It says that there are no covert installation of CCTV cameras. And what that means is all of the cameras are in plain sight. There are no hidden cameras in the CCTV system. And as time goes on, we are going to be putting signs that notify, because obviously we don't all walk around with our head in the clouds. Right? We walk around looking, and cameras aren't at eye level, so as you walk through the city, you're not going to see them. So we will be putting some signs on buildings, on poles, that at kind of eye level identify that a camera is in that area, and it will have like a QR code that you can scan with your phone, and it will take you to our privacy statement around that. So those are coming. And the next slide. Okay, just in case you didn't know, the CCTV cameras are recording 24/7. They don't stop, right? So just day, night, rain, blow, shine, they're always recording. But again, we've got that maximum of 180-day retention period where it's first in, first out, unless the images are in the monitoring facility. They can live time look at the images, move the pan, tilt, zoom cameras, and they can also review recorded, historical images. We talked about that you must be trained. We talked about that there's no unauthorized access. And again, that operators receive training that's relevant to Human Rights Act, PIPA, and the Constitution, right? So there's not only a technical component, but there's understanding human rights in the broadest of categories, including things like privacy, and how that impacts or plays out on what the officers are doing on a day-to-day basis. So processing and handling of recorded material. So I think of this particular, feel free to read it. Of this particular slide, one of the points again is that it's 180 days in and out, but if we need to retain that, for example, if there's a commission of a crime and there's relevant CCTV footage, the criminal, the investigation and criminal case could be 5, 6, 7 years before we would no longer need that footage. So one of the main points there is that we will have this material for as long as we need it. The other point, I think, is the last bullet point on there. Personal data will be used and disclosed only to the people specified in the code. So as a general norm, right, we do not share these images. If you, for example, were involved in an accident and you look up and you see a CCTV camera in that area, you may write into us and say, hey, can I have a copy of that footage? And we will work with you to see whether or not that we can release that image. First of all, is it even relevant or not to your particular circumstances? And then going through a process of making sure who we are giving that information to. Like, you'd have to supply us your driver's license just as a starter, so we need to know who we're dealing with. And more likely than not, if we're supplying you footage, it's going to be in circumstances where third parties, their images their identifying images are pixelated or blurred. Governance, so just generally speaking, we are in compliance and we're being, we are audited, we are reviewed, people can make complaints and there's investigations. So there's a whole governance regime around compliance and audit. And a very important role is bullet point 3. So privacy officers are responsible for maintaining records on camera functioning and maintenance response. That could also be the CCTV manager. The privacy officer can delegate that function to the CCTV manager. All right, next slide. Next slide, we're going to talk about, just mention that we do, apart from CCTV, in compliance with PIPA, the Bermuda Police Service, as indeed every government department, has a privacy officer, and we do too, and that privacy officer and their deputy are responsible for ensuring compliance with privacy laws. We talked a little bit about that. Access to the CCTV system is highly regulated, controlled by access control lists. The room is monitored, and if members of the public do wish to visit the CCTV, that may be able to be arranged on a case-by-case basis, providing we go through the. You can't just rock up there on the day, right? You have to be a supervised visit, and obviously we have to be careful of what is being shown at that particular point in time. But it's not a secret. The room, the place is not a secret. In fact, you've seen photographs of the monitoring facility, which ostensibly looks the same since in 2012. It ostensibly looks the same. And that room, if you didn't know, is held in police comm-ops. So when you're I'm trying to describe what comm-ops is. If you don't know what comm-ops is, comm-ops building below the hill, down at the bottom of the hill from the main police headquarters. There's a chain link fence that you have to go through, and in that room we have our dispatching emergency. What was that? Below Cedar Bridge, near the police field. Thank you. Acknowledge that secure building there. All right. Okay, confidentiality. So CCTV images are not usually shared. There's a lawful basis for disclosing, CCTV footage when required, and an obvious way is, during a court case, we will need to disclose imagery. There are PIPA exemptions, and I think just as importantly, PIPA provides or helps to establish the lawful use of the material. Whenever we share images, we give consideration to pixelating third parties from it. and footage requested or disclosed under PATI or PIPA will be redacted when necessary. All right, the next one. I think the third bullet point on there is one I've said a bit already, but recorded material will not be used for commercial or entertainment purposes. So there's specific reasons why we're able to use this, and we will obviously comply with those reasons. If you have a request for CCTV footage, these need to be handled on a case-by-case basis. So we're obviously going to need to understand why that footage is being requested, and most importantly, we're going to need to know who is requesting it, and we're going to really try to turn around requests where there will be a disclosure within 45 days. You can appreciate that things like pixelation can take time. If it's just 5 seconds worth of footage, that's pretty straightforward, but as it gets longer, it can increase the amount of time once approval has been given to work on that. Okay, release of data to third party. All right, I think we've kind of covered those points. Retention. So again, recorded material is retained for 180 days. Footage that we need to, I feel like I wrote broken record now, but if we need to keep the footage for longer, we will. This is important, actually. So the system is highly auditable. You breathe on the keyboard, it's going to tell you what you had for lunch, right? So every single action, camera movement, deletion, every single system action is audited. And we maintain the audit record. So let's say you deleted something, right? You deleted footage, or it's simply been overwritten. We will have an audit trail for about 3 years that this took place. Now, that's a pretty long time. So if 3 years later, after somebody did something, not shared footage, but downloaded footage from the system, deleted footage from the system, we will be able to say that this camera, this time, between this second and that second was dealt with. Somebody accessed it. All right, some of the constraints or issues are just, I think, points that I want people to be very clear about. Is all these things that I've just talked about today in relation to the CCTV footage have got to do with the overt CCTV system. It should come as no surprise to you that the police have specialist capabilities, and we, just like you see in the movies, we have a whole range of covert capabilities. Everything that I've spoken about today is in relation to the overt aspects of the CCTV system. If or when the police want to use, okay, let me try to explain this. So generally speaking, there's just cameras out there and they're constantly recording. And they're generally recording just who comes through the area or what comes through the area, your daily life like anybody would see on their own like Ring camera that they have at home. And that's just, the cameras are just pointed in areas and locations and at things that we think are important. And that's normal over at CCTV. But every now and again, the police are, for example, surveilling Johnny. Whenever we use systems, technology to surveil an individual, we have what's called a directed surveillance authority. And we must go through the checks and balances that the system has to do the covert to use covert equipment and to track or monitor an individual. That's whether we're using technology or whether we have a surveillance team. And yes, we have a surveillance team, right? Whenever we are directly looking at a named individual, there's a process that we have to go through to get that authority. So whenever we use the CCTV system to look for Johnny, there is an authority in place. And that authority goes up as high as an assistant commissioner. And when we look at that, we look at things like intrusion, proportionality, necessity, before those kinds of decisions are made. And I really want to just be transparent with you about that issue, about that potential use of the system. That whenever the police are looking at a named individual, there is a directed surveillance application in place and approval process for that. All right, so the minister just briefly touched on speed cameras. So the system has the capability to monitor speed. The reality is every single camera in the system can monitor speed, but it cannot produce, it cannot say this car was speeding at this amount to an evidential level. There's a whole other sort of system and process to provide evidential level speed detection, evidence of speed, so that a conviction at court, you can rely on that evidence in court. So when we talk about getting speed detection in place, that's what we're talking about. But if you go out and buy pretty much any camera today, it will tell you the speed of the vehicles that are traveling. Most cameras that you have today will have that capability, and this system is no different, but there's a difference between just being able to say, well, this vehicle is traveling that speed, and being able to bring to a court evidence for a conviction for speed. So we're a good little ways around that. And it's not so much a technology issue, it's more of a legislative, policy, procedural issue, why that's going to take some time. So things like the service of a summons, things like getting the devices certified as speed detection devices. All that kind of stuff needs to take place before we get to the use of speed cameras and being able to prosecute people based on the evidence from speed cameras. So that was essentially it. And if we can just go to, one more. If you want to get our privacy notice, there's a QR code there that will take you, so if you just use your phone, there's a QR code. Of course, somebody tells me that it works, I checked it already. But there's a QR code to get to our privacy notice. So that, and I apologize, I don't know if you feel hot, I feel hot, but I want to get to the Q&A part, and then I will open up the floor for questions. Thank you very much for your time and attention.
Thank you very much, Commissioner. My duty compels me to clarify one part of the very comprehensive presentation. You will have heard the Commissioner talk about the rationale used for the selection of the various sites. And you will have noticed, no doubt, the initials SGCC. In case you didn't know, that's St. George's Cricket Club. And so the reason we wanted cameras there was because we want to see firsthand the St. George's victory celebrations on August 1st. For those of you who are not there physically. That's the only reason we chose St. George's Cricket Club. And Minister Weeks specifically wanted it there. So thank you very much for your presentation, Commissioner. This brings us to the part where we're going to entertain a discussion between both commissioners on topics particularly around CCTV, the system itself, as it relates to privacy. So I'll hand it over to you for a 10 to 12 minute discussion. I will moderate it, I will time it, and I look forward to hearing what you have to say.
Minister, may I use this?
Thanks, sir.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Commissioner Simons. That was a wonderful, comprehensive presentation. I'm going to try to talk for just a few minutes to give you a rest and to give you a chance to have a sip of water. So I think when you hear about things like CCTV cameras being installed by the government, I think it's only natural to think of privacy. I mean, this is a natural human reaction to these issues, to wonder, well, wait a minute, what is that being used for? How can I find out more? And that's the value of laws like PIPA, is that we have a framework that has been brought into effect that gives individuals this information, that helps individuals understand what's happening. And I've often argued that privacy rules even support democracy itself, because by bringing these matters to the surface, by starting conversations like these, we're able to have this feedback loop between people and the leaders that are making these decisions. For the purposes of this meeting, I'm hoping to facilitate this conversation and maybe ask some of the questions you're all thinking, or maybe you haven't quite thought yet. But we'd love to hear from you in case there's anything I don't ask. So to start off, to ask Commissioner Simons, under PIPA, one of the requirements is that anytime personal information is used, it has to have a specific purpose. And you talked about how each of the cameras, when they're used, there's a written purpose for that. So how do you go about determining that? And can you give us some examples of what that looks like?
So we'll look at crime trends. We'll look at where crimes happen. We'll look at the routes that we know people are likely to use to get to those routes. So a lot of the thinking has really been about thoroughfares. We really do appreciate having a camera in somebody's backyard, even if it's a high crime area. That's probably not going to land very well. So that's one of the overriding things. So we're thinking about preventing crime. We're thinking about detecting crime. We're thinking about helping people to feel safer as we select locations for cameras. And one of the things, so you saw we went from 85 to will be 152 sites. So we sat down as an organization and we realized, that there have been some changes. We actually saw that we had cameras here under the old system, and that actually changed how criminals traveled on the commission of crime. So they thought about their route. And clearly, I'm not saying everyone, but it's clearly there's evidence where criminals have rerouted because of the existing system, and we've tried to close some of those loopholes.
Mm-hmm. So, considering that these site locations are not necessarily set in stone for all eternity, how do you go about thinking when they might change or that?
So I think, for us, there's, definitely sort of periods of reviews, which, if I'm just being, totally candid, very often coincide with the next iteration of the cameras. I know under PIPA, what has traditionally been driven by upgrades to the system, there is an additional driver around making sure that the reasons that you said it needs to be here today, tomorrow, are being maintained, or are still there.
And can you talk a little bit about the privacy risk assessment? So, you've talked about you consider the potential harm to individuals, not putting it in someone's backyard, that kind of thing. But how do you think about those risks of harm to individuals? How do you weigh that stuff?
So I think generally it's about, again, most of the cameras are pointed on the thoroughfare. So the risk of harm of just vehicles traveling up and down the road is lower than, let's say, the risk where you're in a neighborhood. And there are some cameras in a neighborhood. So we might mask out where, if it's looking into a yard, or say, because you're panning around the road, but the camera may see, at the edge of the camera, might see a home or access to a home. So we will mask those areas. And so think of one that's been around for a long time, up in St. Monica's Mission, right? So if you've lived in Bermuda for a while, you know that was a hot spot where a number of deaths. So when you look at the risks that are presented there versus the intrusion that camera presents, I would argue that on balance, there's more benefit to having that camera there, doing everything you can to minimize where that camera is looking and keep it in the public on the roads, the thoroughfares. That is a good, proportionate, and I would argue necessary use of the CCTV in that location, for example.
Thank you. And I believe I recall you saying there are regular reviews. So is it on a time frame, or is there a trigger of some kind?
So, I was sort of, you mean about locations?
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
if I'm, really, sort of frankly, the original one was, hey, this is where they should be. They've been there for a number of years. Fast forward to where we are today. PIPA is going to require reviews, and I just don't have a specific number. But I'm going to imagine we're going to be in that 1 year kind of time frame, because we can look across society and just anecdotally perceive whether or not there are shifts. Significant shifts that would, let's say, because I've talked about all of this in the context of crime, but there's also another piece around just sort of traffic. But I would imagine that we're going to be in that somewhere between 6 months or a year, which we will establish by way of policy to review whether or not they're still appropriate.
Okay, thank you. And
what I can tell you is just a bit of reassurance. Because, well, the point really is, hey, Commissioner, what's your timeline, right? That's one of the big points. I get that. What I can tell you from a bit of a reassurance is that going back from the, like, if you want to call it the second generation today, those locations, none of them went away, right? None of them went away. We've increased the amount of locations and kept the ones that we have. So we really do. And the other thing is the team that does this, it's not like hey team, you've got 10,000 locations, just put them out there. No, like each one of these locations, is very expensive to deploy. So you better have a really good reason for putting it in that particular location. And what I can say is I believe that so far, that thinking has been sound and justified.
Okay. Well, so I wanted to ask some questions about resources and how people can get access to them. Because one of the things you mentioned were the principles that you operate under, which do largely align with PIPA's minimum requirements. So proportionality, making sure the data is accurate, complete, and up to date, things like that. How could people get a copy of those types of things? Could someone see the principles?
Yeah, this QR code is going to take you to the privacy statement, which is not the same as the operational policy, but it really does contain the meat of that.
Okay.
So I would use the QR code, and then as time goes on, we'll publish actually a web address for that.
Okay, great. And I think I saw too, you said that there are regular reports that you release on the functioning of the system. We'll be releasing. Okay. Can you give us an idea when we might see those?
Well, we actually have to design what it is that we are going to report on, so we can appreciate the interest that might be in that, but we haven't finalized what the report would do, and I would actually, what the report would contain, and I genuinely welcome, what the public. Like, there's some obvious things, like maybe how many times the CCTV clearly helped in investigations, how many times it was used in, like when we say accidents. So we're still very much thinking about what this report would look like and the timelines in which we would publish it. That is still being developed.
So one of the questions I think people will have, because there's so many different types of cameras, they can do different things. So I wanted to talk about the capabilities a little bit. Can they record sound, for example?
No, the cameras can't record sound.
Okay, so just visual only?
Visual only.
Okay. And at times there's kind of a gap between what the technology is capable of doing and what may be legally authorized to do. Like, you talked about the ticketing system, for example, earlier. So could you speak about how you strike that balance between what's technically possible and what you're legally permitted to do?
So I think for me, the best example I can give is when I shared about what overt cameras are there to do. That technology could also be deployed in a covert capacity, but we have, a raft of authorities or an authority process that we need to go through before we can do that. I mean, right now, the only other than the resolution being better, so, you know, now we can do make and model depending on the camera, depending on the speed, depending on the time of day, we might be able to actually identify an individual, certainly make and model of vehicles and stuff like that. Clothing features, you know, we'll be able to do, but things like, for example, AI, so we're not deploying AI as an individual technology per se. What is particularly good about this system that the other one couldn't do is, let's just say you had an image of a vehicle, a particular vehicle. So you've got a still frame of a vehicle. We can capture that key frame, that still frame, and then ask the system, draw like a box around the vehicle, and say, system, find me this vehicle throughout the system going back. Now, that perhaps is the single greatest change advantage. Besides resolution, that is the single greatest technology advantage. So you can imagine that you have a shooting on Court Street, somebody comes into the room and they start at that one camera. And the further away you go, you have to look at all the potential cameras where the individual could go in order to find, you know, to go back in time where they were. However, with this system, and I'm not saying it works perfectly all the time, but we've gone from night to day, right? This system, you're able to say, here's the frame, find me this image going back. So that is, I'm not quite answering your question, but it is, you know, it is one of the technology advances of this current system. So I think just as technology evolves, where it doesn't fall within the ambit of the overt CCTV, there will be additional authorities that are in place to use it.
And you're saying that capability exists right now? It would be the kind of "Where's Johnny" scenario you talked about earlier?
Yeah. Yes. You mean to find images?
Yeah.
That technology is very much a feature of the system today.
Okay. And I'm getting a subtle signal that we're running out of time, but there was a really important question I wanted to discuss, which is this concept of consent.
Right.
And so I want to start with a little preamble myself, which is to kind of explain an aspect of PIPA. So quite often, when people think about their personal information being used, the first thing they think is, well, you have to get my permission. You know, you can't do it without my permission. In fact, under PIPA, there are circumstances where consent is not a requirement. So it's one capability. You know, if an organization did get your consent, then you can say, okay, they do have a legal reason for using the personal information. But sometimes there are other legal reasons as well, such as if a law, like a criminal enforcement law, authorizes or requires the use of that information. So I wanted to get your perspective on that and to say, can you speak to those provisions of law that do authorize this use? What's the grounding for this system?
So I think to answer that question, you really almost don't even want to think about CCTV. So the police, in the nature of the job that they do, have the right to collect, obtain, and use information. When I stop you at the side of the road and I say, who are you? And I say, give me your driver's license, you know, the police just have a whole raft of powers in which to obtain information. The CCTV system is a bit of technology that can enable that. So generally speaking, the police have an awful lot of powers when it comes to prevent, detect, investigate, prosecute people for criminal actions. The CCTV really is a tool to enable that.
Okay, thanks for that clarity. So I think we're moving on to audience questions, is that right? Yeah. So happy to open up the floor.
Thank you very much to both of our commissioners. This brings us to the point in our proceedings tonight where you get to participate. and pose any comments or questions you might have. By way of guidelines, if you wish to make a comment or ask a question, just raise your hand. One of our team members will bring you a mic so that you can all hear what you're asking. I'm going to ask you to try to confine your remarks to within 2 minutes so that it gives more people the opportunity to participate. And plus, we don't want to be here all night. Reverend T said we have to be out of here by midnight, so you want to be succinct as possible. So if you just indicate, yeah, it looks like my brother here wishes to be the first one up. Good evening.
Thank you. Commissioner,
Which one?
Commissioner, please.
Nice try.
Over 243 of the units are up and running. Camera units.
Yep.
Yep. Why can't the police find the individual
Yep.
that you've been looking for since May 1st? And you have cameras throughout the back of town area. Why is it so difficult?
Well, I mean, one, I'm not sure that entirely relates to CCTV, but the reality is that cameras provide snapshots in location. So you can be sure that when the events that you're probably talking about, come to court, CCTV will play a role in that. But like the minister said, CCTV will never replace a member of the community who comes forward and says what they saw, heard, and did. But it is an effective tool for law enforcement to use to reduce fear and investigate crime.
Don't you agree that these cameras will either bring confidence or a lack of confidence for the society, especially when they're utilized?
I think the cameras have the potential, and in fact they will, increase confidence and feelings of safety within the community.
Thank you. My last question. This sounds like the COVID meetings. I'm going to get 2 questions. It was asked about audio with the CCTV.
Correct. Yep.
Why do you just don't have audio with video and audio with the camera system?
Why don't we?
I ask that because Ring cameras
Yep.
that are on people's houses, and I have it myself,
Yep.
have audio and video.
Yeah.
Why are you not invested in cameras with both?
The level of intrusion that creates is in my view, is disproportionate to the use of that technology or the risk that we were mitigating. It's one thing to see people walking up and down the road. It's another thing to hear what those people are saying.
Good evening, everybody. One question. How soon will you be able to get the speed cameras in operation? Because the traffic on the road is very dangerous as far as speed is concerned. How soon?
So we are a good year. We're a good year away. It could be a little bit sooner. It could be a little bit later. There's, like I said, it's less of a technology issue and more of a legislative process kind of piece. There's a number of moving parts that we've begun, but it will take some time to complete. And in terms of managing expectations, I think if I say a year, then we should hit that target.
Good evening. I have 2 questions actually, one for the Minister and one for Commissioner Pitt. Following on from the last question. Sorry. Following on from the last question, and so it's a legislative delay that's means that we can't have speed cameras actually issuing tickets for another year. But I think you said back in March that you're not going to start the legislative process until all the cameras are installed. Why didn't you start it, bearing in mind that this process has been going on for about 2 years now? Why didn't you start the legislative process 2 years ago, and then it could be all ready and good to go as soon as the cameras are up and running? Why wait?
Well, actually, the testing of the speed cameras has been going on all this time. So it's not a matter of waiting. The legislative process, making sure we have the right technology and the like, we have to focus on the infrastructure and getting the system up and running. And now that we've got that, we could add different features to it.
Okay, Minister. And Commissioner? Sorry. You commented that these cameras have been around for 20 years. You were around when they were first installed back in what? Mid-70s, mid-90s, yeah. So why do you think there is this sort of
Why?
Do you think that there is an increased concern over privacy now than there was 25 years ago? And if so, why do you think that is?
I just think privacy is quite topical. Absolutely. Absolutely, I think there is an increase. I can speak to my 20 years of being involved in this project. I'm not going to say never. I'm not going to say privacy was never a topic, but it's just not like today. I have tons of scars from why can't you put a camera in my location? And the level of discourse, I think, around privacy in general. I mean, don't forget, like, Bermuda has just adopted PIPA, so privacy in and of itself is a topic of conversation within the community. I think where we are in 2025 in the world and all the things that we see happening around invasions of privacy and the topic of privacy globally, all of that have come together for the average citizen to think about privacy. And quite frankly, I think that's a good thing. I think people wondering about their privacy, I think people asking about their privacy, asking the government to sort of, can you throw me a bone? Can you help me out? Can you help me understand? Can you explain, why this is the case? Is an absolutely good thing. And we, I'll speak from the policing organization, I'm sure the rest of government shares that view. We're open and accountable and desiring of those questions, to be asked. I think it's important, I'll speak just for the police, that we are fair, accountable, and transparent.
Hear me? I want to thank you all for providing this forum. I'm just wondering whether or not this is one of many forums that you'll be using to educate the community about CCTV.
So we have recorded this one, and we're not sure like how many more we'll do in person, but definitely as a start, there is this will be available online.
Second question, you mentioned specifically about retroactively analyzing CCTV.
Yes.
Does the system have a proactive component, meaning find, fix, and follow?
Well, yes, it could. It could have a proactive. So, for example, if we put into the system a license plate number, it can set off alarms when that license plate goes through a particular cameras. So it can do that, but it's largely restricted to I'm going to say license plate. You may be able to, just like you can tell the camera to look for this vehicle and it's looking for the vehicle, not just the license plate, you may be able to do that kind of alerting on a vehicle kind of thing. A vehicle. So yes, those kind of alerts are there, and even in the previous system for LPR, license plate recognition, we had an alerting capability.
I'm assuming also this could be done with humans.
Say that again?
With human beings?
There's no. The system has the ability to recognize patterns and objects. So if you walked in front of a camera and the camera's this far away and it could get a really good picture of your face, then it could apply that same pattern recognition to a face, right? However, the cameras are 30 feet away. So that just creates some immense challenges for things like facial recognition. And it's a kind of difficult thing to explain and contextualize. What I'm not doing is saying categorically, absolutely not. What I am saying is that given the placement of the cameras, which are 20 feet in the air, and then at an angle at a particular location, facial recognition is not going to be reliable. So let me try to give you an example. So when we go through the E-gates at Bermuda, at the airport, you go in and you go through the E-gates, you are standing 1 foot away from the camera. If you did that E-gate from, I mean, they're getting better. Like, technology's getting better. But if you did that E-gate from 20 feet away, I don't think so. Okay? So that's the best answer I can give you. Yep. So today, there's no person whose job it is to monitor cameras. We will, in the next 3 to 6 months, start with 1, maybe 2, start maybe 40 hours a week, and increase that over time. What we have found over the years of the system, that the bang for the buck really is in something's happened, now let's sort of find out, right? There is some bang for the buck, like, we will have some examples of a CCTV operator seeing somebody in the city of Hamilton, they're always in the city of Hamilton, it's always in the city of Hamilton, stealing a bike. Like, we have those stories, right? There will be examples of a CCTV operator in the city of Hamilton seeing a fight or something like that kick off and right away being able to alert. Eventually, some of the cameras, like largely within the city of Hamilton, will be displayed up around ComOp. So they'll just be able to look up and casually see from fixed locations, and there will be a person whose job it is to monitor CCTV, and most importantly, process the requests that are internal and external, because that's extremely time consuming. So we're going to need, an officer says, hey, I want footage between this period and this period. They've got to go find it, see if there's anything relevant, burn it on a disk, and provide it to the officer so that they can continue an investigation.
If I may add something. For the last person that asked the question, Mr. Bean, the answer to your first question as to are we going to take this on the word, the government's intention is to do so, because in our effort to be as transparent as possible, we want to now, after being in the city of Hamilton, probably take the opportunity to have another night up in Somerset and probably one down the east, so that we could impart as much information as possible and address and allay as much fears that people may have about privacy and the CCTV. So yes, we will be going in other locations. Run it.
Oh, sorry.
This question was for our suggestion is for the police commissioner. You mentioned about establishing a website. Is any consideration to have the camera locations digitally, so the public, they want to go online, they can see where your camera is actually located?
So we have kicked that can around. If I'm honest, we have kicked that can around and around. And what I'm going to say today, I think the value in publishing that. So it's one thing when a criminal has to go around. Sorry, are you asking for a sign or just publishing all the locations? No, I'm not for that. I'm not. I think easily publishing all the locations for dots on a map for criminals, makes it easy to plan routes. And I'm not, and don't get me wrong, because somebody else might say, yeah, we're going to find out over a period of time where they are. You'd be surprised. I'm not giving everybody that kind of credit. And today, the locations aren't hidden. There will be signage when you travel in through the area, but I have made the decision that publishing in a list or dots on a map is counterproductive today to what we are trying to achieve. That's not to say that that decision would never be revisited, but I've been asked that question multiple times, and today, that's the view that I have. And look around and just see how many other people do that. It ain't a popular thing, right? And it's not a popular thing for a reason. Oh, sorry, this, okay, Vernon, after this lady had her, okay. Yeah.
Good evening to you all. Most of what I'm about to say, I've spoken to Minister Weeks about this before. To do with the speed camera. I'm against the speed camera. And also partially against the operation of the current radar system. Now, going back on, in 1970, based on evidence, asked that the speed be raised to 30 miles an hour. As most of you might recall, in 1970 we transferred from miles per hour to kilometers per hour, and also the change to move from pounds, shillings, and pence to dollars and pence. And our reason was that it would create more smooth movement of traffic, moving from the city, etc. A smoother transition of movement. The reason why I have a problem with the speed cameras and the current camera is because the government has not set a speed limit. It's sort of like, okay, if you exceed 52 kilometers, then we'll give you a ticket. The problem is that if somebody's doing 65 kilometers and the police pulls them over and then you go to court, the judge is fining you for 30 kilometers over the speed limit, 30 plus the 35, not the 13 kilometers above the 52 kilometers which you allow. I believe it may be higher, but I remember a few years ago they were saying that 52. We need to have a set speed limit. Now, some of the other problems with the current radar and also the speed cameras is you have we do not have an overtaking lane. And as a result of not having a third or fourth overtaking lane, what happens is a lot of instances in the middle right now, it's tremendous amount of traffic. And you've got seniors that are driving at 30 kilometers and they're slowing up traffic and heaving traffic. And nighttime, these seniors is even worse. They keep touching brakes because these LED lights are blinding them and they can't see. Another problem is that you've got horse and buggies occasionally on the road. You've got cranes. It's very difficult to overtake them. And then the opportunity avails themselves. People have to accelerate extremely fast. So just when you're accelerating, you might go through a speed camera. That's why I have problems with these cameras. It's no debate. You've got some of these paddle bike riders that are riding two abreast. And sometimes you've got traffic backed up for a mile or two. You can't overtake because there's so much traffic coming the other way. And you all haven't addressed all these problems. I spoke to the minister about these before, and these haven't been addressed. It's like you're going to be haphazard and put these laws in place, and all these problems exist. And it's unfair. It's almost a crime against humanity to do that. You're taking money from people after you said you're giving you this leeway, and then you're charging them $44 a month. It's not right. You see?
Come on now.
Sir, it's been
Come on
about
now.
5 minutes. If you could wrap it up, that would be great.
So I'll answer those questions almost. Where you forgot the lady?
Running.
She's said like 4 times. I'm sorry, but she just put her head up. All right, ma'am, let me answer the question first. Let me answer because I can only handle so many backed up. Okay, you said a lot of things, right? So the speed limit is 35. Government has set a limit, but over time, you know, the police assess when it is that they're going to start to ticket people. And right now, 52 kilometers, the number 52 or 53 kilometers is the difference between when you have to go to court, and below 52 or 53 you can pay the ticket online, but above 53 kilometers you must attend court. So that's where that number comes into place. I think I appreciate you mentioned a number of things, a number of things that I could certainly relate to as a road user when I'm trying to get home at 5 o'clock and well, there won't be a horse and buggy, but maybe you know, bicycles and whatnot. So our roads are narrow. That's not going to change. I think being more lenient in terms of speed is not a particular thing, and one of the things that I want to do, whilst Bermuda has experienced on average 12 fatalities every year for going back to whenever, in spite of all the changes in technology, changes in vehicle safety, we still get around 12 a year. One of the things that anyone who's been here for a while will say that in the last, I'm just going to arbitrarily pick a number, 10 years, the level of the standard of driving behavior and the carelessness on the road, the lack of courtesy on the road has crept in. And if I had $1 for every time that I get beaten up for the lack of police presence on the road, the lack of enforcement, particularly traffic enforcement, I'd be a very rich person. I think when we turn the speed cameras on, you're absolutely right. It's going to take a little while for people to realize necessarily where they are, and then after a while, we'll probably get you over speed over distance. It's not going to start out that way, but it's going to change. It's going to increase the average driving, like the level of care, the level of caution, and the level of courtesy, and we really, really, really need to do that. I think overtaking in front of a speed camera, people are going to know where the speed camera is. If you're driving from point A to point B every day, you're going to know where those speed cameras are, and you're going to exercise particular caution, you know, around that area. I do appreciate your point that speed cameras are more indiscriminate versus if you do have a radar operator and they're watching somebody overtake in a safe area, there may be a little bit of slack cut for that individual, whereas a speed camera won't. They'll be set at a particular number, and that ticket will be, you know, on its way. That is one of the challenges, but I think the benefit is that driver behavior is going to get better, and there are far more people that are saying they want driver behavior to get better than are saying, commenting about the potential impact of the tickets. Sorry, good. Well, I'm pretty sure there's no engineer that said I appreciate that Bermuda does not have the same benefits, largely because of space, that other road engineers may have in designing cambers, bends, radius of bends, all that kind of thing. But there's no engineer that is designing roads to kill people. Okay, ma'am?
Good evening, Commissioner. You mentioned the privacy officer.
Yep.
I was wondering if you could enlighten us about that. Is that a high-ranking officer in school?
Sat right in the back there. He's got his head down.
So, who are you?
That's
What's your rank?
Andrew Smalling, Chief Inspector Smalling. Yeah,
Because I see that as a very responsible position,
it is.
and it's a tall order, so I wish you all the best in that.
It is. It is. Yeah, well, thank you. Good. Kudos to Mr. Smalling.
Good evening.
Sir.
Couple quick questions. One, the archival, 180 days of archival footage. Are we talking, are those video files, or are they like millions of still photos?
Video files.
Okay.
Video files.
Second question, is there potential or obstacles in legislation or code of conduct or privacy principles whereby that archival footage could be used to create or derive new data that is aggregated, non-identifiable, things like traffic counts for the highways department or pedestrian counts for the Department of Planning who's redesigning the city?
Yeah, so I think that there's the potential for that to happen. Right now, what our privacy statement says, what in terms of what our use is, has been really constrained to the criminal traffic piece. But there are, I mean, as you've alluded to, there could be some incredible benefits of having this data used in other ways. But that will have to be explored and then explained to the public should we go down that particular route. Fully appreciating that disaggregated, non-identifiable data, there's probably not going to be some concerns, but we will have to go through a process. Somebody will have to have the case, make the case, and then go through a process to amend what the use is. But I think you're absolutely right. CCTV cameras in other jurisdictions, if there's your morning and night commute, you can log into the system and see, hey, this thoroughfare is really busy. It's backed up. Let me take another one. And I'm sure there's a lot of other uses for those cameras. But it is about being clear and transparent about that use and adjusting what the use is for and explaining to the public.
Good evening, gentlemen. Number one, I don't see any women on your panel.
I know.
Why?
That thought occurred to me too. I know. I had a staff member. Did you want to come up on the? No.
Anyway, I would like to say that.
Well spotted.
Yeah, it's a valid criticism.
I appreciate what you are doing your utmost to do with the cameras. But my concern is that we're becoming a police state with all of these cameras, and I am against that. The other thing, and my question would be, the cameras on Loyal Hill, yes, I am from Loyal Hill, we've had lots of chats. The cameras on Loyal Hill were removed the week before the election. However, the pole and that wonderful hot box is still up there. And I'd like to know when that will be removed. It went up kind of fast, and I'm hoping it will be removed fast, but it doesn't appear to be moving too fast at all.
Right. So you said two things. I would definitely like to address the first one. I don't think Bermuda is on its way to becoming a police state, but I do recognize the impact that discussions around cameras and the CCTV system in the climate that we are today can bring about those feelings. You have no idea what a police state is. We are just nowhere near that kind of space. In terms of Loyal Hill, so that camera was taken down while we assess how to cover that, because from a policing perspective, that's one of the areas that we identified where criminals have altered how they get through that area because of the lack of CCTV coverage. So we're still very much examining what is the best solution for that location. So I'm unable to give you a timeline for any substantial change. I appreciate that. I appreciate that too.
Good evening. Thank you, Commissioner of Police, for your succinct overview of the CCTV cameras and the Privacy Commissioner for the questions that you've raised. I had two questions, but now I have a third, piggybacking off of the lady's question. Is there, I'll ask that third question first. Is there scope to campaign to remove a camera?
Yeah, I mean, as much as we're here today, there's scope to hear from the public about the impact on cameras and what they would like to see happen. But, you know, bear in mind that what can often happen is you have a very small, vociferous group against a very large, silent group, and you also have the reasons why those cameras are there in the first place. So to succinctly answer your question, yes, there's always scope for members of the communities to talk about the impact of the cameras, their thoughts, their feelings, desires, and intentions relative to those cameras.
Okay. So, for example, if crime were reduced in a particular area, there may be scope for the neighborhood to request removal.
Sure, but there are not a lot of places where it is crime in that area while we have a camera. So, and even in the Loyal Hill example, which I said, is what we know is not open for debate, but on the way to a commission of murder, somebody traveled through Loyal Hill purposefully to avoid detection on Middle Road, to get further down, traveling east to west, to get further down the island and use Loyal Hill. So it's not that there's necessarily crime in that particular location, but it is an access route that is used. And the cameras in the overwhelming, well, I should say all of the areas, are really looking at the roads and who's traveling or what's traveling on those roads. So just bear in mind that just because you say, hey, right around this camera, we haven't had a crime in the last 20 years, I might just come back to you and say, well, actually, we're not really concerned about that particular area and crime that is there, but people use this way to get through, to get from east to west, north to south.
Thank you.
But we do share that. So like you're gonna say, hey, come on, and we'll have an honest conversation about what it is that we're seeing. We had some very honest conversations about what we saw in Loyal Hill, not things that I would necessarily just, say in this session, but with that community, we let them know what it is that we saw that drove the placement of that, and very little had to do with Loyal Hill.
Okay, this sort of segues into my next question, which is, I understand that the cameras and the system isn't owned by the police, it's owned by the ministry, managed by the police.
Yes.
Is there a memorandum of understanding, say there's a change in political agenda, or there's, whatever it may be, if there's a conflict between what the police is today and how it's managed by police today, but a change in, say, political initiative?
That's a very good question. Actually, that's a very good question. So today there is no, that's a very good question. There is no memorandum between the ministry, let's say, and the police. What there is what the camera system is for, which has been published in the privacy statement. So that use would need to change. Privacy laws would require us to publish that. So, the members of the public would be alive to that.
So, I'm sorry, now I'm on question number 4. Going back to the latest issue and the removal of cameras, if a neighborhood really wanted to campaign for removal, notwithstanding the issue about it being a thoroughfare, would they be able to campaign or meet with their MP
that has happened.
address
MPs are going to be able to want, the MPs I'm sure are going to want to meet with their constituents to address constituents' concerns. So the answer without speaking for, you know, politicians is yes.
My last question, thank you for your patience, is I understand the reason for, we're talking major crime, road safety, but is there scope to consider other issues which are just as serious, but perhaps not as safety oriented, such as dumping?
Yeah.
Areas of dumping, might there be capacity for cameras to be in those areas?
So the short answer to that question is yes. For example, in the UK, I didn't understand this term, but it's called fly tipping. It's a massive issue, and there are CCTV installations whose objective is to detect and deter and detect that activity. And there's nothing that stops us expanding the use and identifying why cameras are in particular locations. However, we have to be proportionate in you know, deciding to put a camera there, and there, you know, we have to answer the proportionality, the necessity, and the privacy reasons. So the intrusion needs to be proportionate to the risk that we're trying to, or crime or offense that we're trying to mitigate. But yes, it could be. Yeah. I mean, and an example of that, I'm going on, right? So when you drive up to Tynes Bay, there's CCTV there, right? It's not government CCTV. There's CCTV in a lot of places. It's just that we're putting a lot of this energy and discussion into the government CCTV system, but Bermuda is a watch with CCTV, private and public.
Good evening, gentlemen. A question. The principles that the police service are using for CCTV was really good to see, and it was wonderful to hear that there will be no sound on the CCTV cameras. This is probably more of a general question. Will there be guidance or something that will bring businesses and such together who are using cameras in the city and things like that to understand that, you know, using principles like this or the importance of protecting people's privacy by not using sound on their cameras might be, you know, released to the community so that people can follow some best practices?
I think that's for me, really. Yeah. Thank you, Dr. Stones. I appreciate the question. In short, this touches on what Commissioner Simons was just saying as well, which is that the purpose of today's conversation is really the public CCTV system, but there's quite a lot of private CCTV cameras that are in play. And just as the PIPA requirements apply to public systems, it's almost certain that the PIPA requirements will apply to private use of cameras as well. And that means that if a business is using a CCTV camera, they should be prepared to provide notice to individuals that that's happening. They should be able to enumerate or explain what the use of that is, how long it might be retained, all those kinds of details. And there is guidance that my office is working on to help lay that out for individuals. We're also very conscious that particularly small organizations or household CCTV cameras that may be public-facing, you know, it's not necessarily the case that people have full-time privacy officers. So we're going to try to make that very accessible with simple checklists that people can use and templates for how they explain this when someone walks in the front door of a shop, for example.
Okay, we're going to entertain one last question for the night.
One final question. In comparison to the system that they use in England and the system that we have here, is that system going to be successful? In England, I've seen in many cases crime and the courts and the police go into the system and they get convictions. How are we going to get to that standard? Is the system that we have here in the same standard, or how can we get to that standard?
It's a little difficult to answer that question. What I can say is that the cameras that we have are state-of-the-art, latest generation, latest, technology cameras. What I can say, if I had $1 for every time the detectives are saying, we need to get this going, we're not going to use it, it's been used already in, crimes that have been committed, and I'm sure that evidence is going to play itself out in court. And if you're comparing Bermuda to the UK, there just is some comparison. Like the UK has been, in terms of the amount of cameras, the UK is probably one of the most surveilled locations in the world. So we're just, there's just no comparison. You look at, incidents that happen in the UK and they get bus footage. People don't realize, the bus footage, he looks outside of the bus and captures images. Every shop store, there's integration with public and private CCTV or access, which incidentally, our system has the ability to ingest other people's footage. We have that. That's obviously not something that we're doing right now because we need to put policy and process around how that would take place and answer the question, why would we ingest versus just get a copy and use. So I think to compare Bermuda with the UK and have a general question about, are we going to be as successful as the UK, it's just a really difficult question to answer, and we're not, it's not apples and oranges. Will the CCTV make a difference in solving crime? Absolutely, it already has. Will I think it contribute to feelings of safety? I think absolutely it already has. And if I continue to get questions where people are asking, can I have CCTV in my area? I think it's an indication that there are more overwhelming, there are people that are comforted by the CCTV than are maybe concerned or worried about the CCTV.
So this brings us to the part of tonight's proceedings where I thank you on behalf of the Ministry of National Security, and Minister Weeks in particular, for your attendance this evening and also for your participation. I also want to recognize the presence of our vendor, Digicel, who have representatives here tonight, and thank them for all their assistance in this massive project that we have for the betterment and benefit of all of Bermuda. We hope it was informative, and as we mentioned earlier, we are going to have an iteration of tonight of Somerset over the coming weeks, and then once St. George's has settled down after the victory celebration, we'll have another replication down St. George's, where we'll attempt to spread the word throughout the country. I also want to note that if you do have any burning questions that you were not bold enough to ask during this process, reps from Digicel and the commissioners and the minister and I will be around should you have any further questions. So in closing, thank you for giving us your time tonight, and thank you for your attention.
Thank you.